All right, now we are officially saying good evening. Jeff, are we live on the interweb? I'm waiting for the go. Sorry, folks. A little technical, working out the technical side here. Are we go? We are go. I think we are thumbs up. And welcome to the Port Washington Public Library and a new program called Inside the Musician's Mind. I want to thank everyone for coming out this evening. I want to thank everyone for joining us at home on the internet. And telling you a bit about the program. The format is loosely based on a show called Inside the Actor's Studio. And our feeling is musicians are equally, if not even more important than actors. So let's, give some of the musicians their due. At the end of the show, you'll see a nod to the questionnaire that James Lipton has done on the show for many years. It was established by Bernard Prefot. And on a personal level, my approach to the guests is something along the lines of my dear friend Pete Fornatel. So between Mr. Lipton, Mr. Prefot, and Mr. Fornatel, I hope I can do them all justice. As for me, I'm a lifelong music enthusiast. I'm a collector, a historian, and I've often wondered what makes my favorite musicians, composers, and lyricists tick. Why do they do what they do? How do they best do what they do? Basically, what goes on inside the musician's mind. I hope to venture into some areas that promise to be interesting and fascinating and possibly unusual, and I plan on taking all of you with me as this series continues. Just to give you a quick announcement of some things coming up. This Sunday is the tribute to Gene Ritchie that we do annually at the library. Sally Rogers and Howie Burson will be performing that Sunday at 3 p.m. Future Inside the Musician's Minds, Nellie Mackay will join us with a guest host, John Platt of WFUV, on Tuesday, February 26th. And I've just confirmed this afternoon that Felix Cavalieri of the Rascals will be joining me here at the library sometime in the spring. So, without further ado, let me give you a bit of background on tonight's guest. Eric Bloom was born in Brooklyn, raised in Queens, and during and after a stint at Hobart College where he studied modern languages, Eric found himself working his way into a career in music. Eric Bloom has been the lead vocalist of Long Island's own Blue Oyster Cult since 1969, with such classic songs as Don't Fear the Reaper, Godzilla, Black Blade, Burnin' For You. BOC has sold more than 24 million records worldwide, including 7 million in the US alone. And the band established itself as a major presence on the newly launched MTV when the network premiered in 1981, helping to promote the idea of music video in modern popular culture. So without further ado, would you please welcome the first guest of our new show, Inside the Musician's Mind, Long Island Music Hall of Fame inductee, Mr. Eric Bloom. How are you? All right. Oh. What's up? Welcome. You may want to swing that over a little more toward you.
I've never talked to one of these before.
New technology for you.
Hello, poor people. How are you?
There you are.
Let's go to Frank's and get a slice.
And some of the soup. The soup is great.
Excellent soup.
The soup is
Excellent
awesome,
soup.
yeah. So tonight I figure we're going to talk, of course, about Blue Oyster Cult, the band. But
Good idea.
yeah, but I think what we also want to do is the idea being to sort of get a background on you, on Eric Bloom as a musician, as a person, what got you to where you are. So I'm going to start just by asking, what was the first music that you remember hearing in your life that made a lasting impression on you? The thing that woke you up to music?
Let me silence my phone, okay?
Oh, yeah. Please silence your cell phones.
Silence your phone.
Now, if you were streaming that while you, I don't know, it would cause a rip in the time-space continuum, I think.
I found out this is not on the Port Washington Library website. It is on YouTube,
Yeah.
and then you search for the
Facebook.
library.
You got it,
okay?
yeah. Yeah, so anyone who is looking on, in the audience looking to let folks know how they can see this, it's on the Port Washington Public Library YouTube page. So, okay.
And a wonderful facility this is. I've used it myself
Yeah.
over the years.
Thank you. So as we were saying, so what would you remember as the first music that really affected you, that made you say, you know, wow?
Well, I'm a geezer, so I go way back with AM radio. Anybody AM radio? WMCA good guys or I used to listen to AM radio. I had a plastic radio next to my bed and used to sneak listening to the radio late at night. I go back to, you know, listening to the Inner Sanctum and stuff like that on the radio late at night and scaring the crap out of myself. But most of your listeners wouldn't remember that. But AM radio in New York was Alan Freed and early rock and roll, and that's what I grew up with. And late 50s. You know, I sort of, like Elvis was a little before me, but I do remember him, you know, and that's like Don't Be Cruel and all that stuff was like 56, 57. I started listening to Top 40 radio around that time, 57, 58. I was in junior high school. I went to junior high school 216 on the corner of Utopia Parkway and Horace Harding Boulevard.
Sure.
Anybody from Queens?
Yeah, sure. Now, at what point do you remember sort of the transition happening from listening to music passively to actively thinking to yourself, I think I want to do this?
Well, that would be the Beatles on Ed Sullivan.
There
Like
you
many people in my age were influenced by, I could do that maybe, you know, or I want to do that, or to aspire to something like that.
Yeah.
Beatlemania was like a big influence.
Were you
But I wanted to do that before that, but that was like, you know, oh my God, if I could only do that.
did you actually get to see them? Did you go to
I
the
did, yes.
Shea Stadium?
I had a college friend who had been in England the year before and brought back the English album, Meet the Beatles, the version of the English version. And he had played, this is my sophomore year of college, and he had brought it over, and we all were listening to it, and before Beatlemania, and we're trying to digest it, and he says, these guys are huge in Europe. And we're trying to, like, I don't know about that drummer, you know. But it was still, you know, it hadn't happened yet. This is months and months and months before it hit here. But we still knew something was going on.
Now, there's an artist that comes up frequently when you read about you online, and it brings up a band called Wilmer and the Dukes, who
Well,
seem to make a profound impression on you.
Anybody went to college in upstate New York or New England in that era, Wilmer was a black musician, played saxophone. He's a year older than me, and I used to go see him play. He played the bar band circuit, fraternity parties, clubs all over upstate and into New England, and I used to follow him around. And he was a big influence. He was just a great player and a good guy. And I saw them play, I must have seen him play 50, 60 times. And just the way he did his business, and he had his own security guys, and he had all the latest equipment, and he played just great. And me and my college roommate, we must have gone to see him every weekend somewhere.
Did you stay in touch with Wilmer after the fact?
No, you know, I saw him a couple of times after I left the area.
Yeah.
I went to school at Hobart College in upstate New York, and he lived in town. So I
Oh,
used to go
okay.
down to his house. I was friends with him after a while, and I just he was making so much money as a bar band that he was driving a Mercedes in Geneva, New York in 1965, and everybody else was not.
Wow. Now, you mentioned the Beatles, and we talked a little bit about Wilmer. Who do you feel really had the greatest influence on you personally as a performer? How you approach an audience, how you approach playing?
James Brown.
Okay.
James Brown, Wilson Pickett. I was very influenced by R&B guys,
Okay.
as far as showmanship. And, then I would say after that, the British invasion. It's all a conglomeration of no one particular person, but,
Right.
Jackie Wilson.
You never did the Cape thing, though.
No.
James Brown.
Well, not, let's,
Oh,
there was a cape.
There was a Cape.
If you go back and look at our archive photographs, I did have a cape for a little while.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right.
The first tour.
You traded with Rick Wakeman back and forth?
No, I did have a cape, and I still have it.
All right. Or do we see a revival of the Cape?
No.
Well, on a personal level, as you're developing an interest in music, was there anyone in particular in your life who was sort of your personal champion as your interest in music was developing? Family member, friends, anyone that was sort of pushing you along?
Ask that a different way.
Who was your personal? I'm trying to think of how to put that across a different way. In other words, as you were growing up, as you took an interest in wanting to get involved in music,
In my family?
and within the family, close friends.
No, really didn't have anybody in my family who was particularly musical.
Okay.
This is just, I don't know where it came from. It was just something within me, that I just always wanted to listen to tunes and be involved in music, and
Right. Right.
bought a guitar at like senior year of high school and tried to pick at it. And I bought it at a music store in Queens for $52. And within a year, the neck started doing this.
Now, you talked about going into a music store, and that leads me to Sam Ash in Hempstead.
Yes, no longer exists, that building.
Yeah. Now, you first met the members of a band called Soft White Underbelly there, is that true?
Yeah, you want that whole gory story?
Sure, if you
Oh,
don't
boy.
mind going into it.
All right. Gosh, it takes too long to tell the whole story, but when I left upstate New York I got a job after playing in bar bands in upstate New York for many years. I got a real job working as a booking agent, and I moved from upstate New York to down here, not Long Island, but got a job in Manhattan working for Premier Talent, which was a booking agency. And they were booking The Who and many other big bands. And they had a tour starting with The Crazy World of Arthur Brown. And do you remember his song, Fire da-da-da, Makes You Wanna Burn? And they had an opening act of Brian Auger and Julie Driscoll were going to open their tour. And I was going to be a trainee. I had just graduated college or a year before, and I was going to be a trainee agent working on that tour. And I came down, moved to New York, and called on a Monday morning. I said, I'm ready to go to work. They had hired me. And they said, well, they couldn't get their visas straight, and the tour was not coming, and your job is gone. Ooh. So I'd already moved and was down here, so I said, I got to do something. So I walked into Sam Ash and asked Jerry Ash that I bought instruments from, and I said, please give me a job. And he didn't have job openings, but he gave me a trainee job as a salesperson at Sam Ash in the Hempstead store, which no longer exists, but it's downtown Hempstead. And I worked there maybe 2 or 3 weeks. This is the fall of 1968. And during my tenure as a trainee salesperson at Sam Ash, some guys walked in the store to buy stuff, instruments. And I had taken a picture of my college bar band called Lost and Found, and I'd put it up on the wall with other band photographs, 8x10s. And there was The Who, the Beatles, Lost and Found, the Rolling Stones. And I never told the Ash family that I had put my picture on the wall with the other people. It was just like a joke. And this other band walked in to buy instruments. There was a band called the Soft White Underbelly from Long Island. And one of the guys in the band looked up and saw the picture and said, "Oh, Lost and Found. I know those guys." I said, "How do you know those guys?" And they said, "Our singer knows the guys in that band." I said, "Who's your singer?" And we started a conversation. I said, "Well, that's me in that picture." And that's why I'm sitting here today, because he recognized me in the picture and we started making small talk. And to cut to the chase, about a week later, Underbelly had a show at the Electric Circus, which was on St. Mark's Place, and in the Village, and they had a poor sound system there. And I had my sound system from my bar band days in my van. That's how you get in a band, by the way. Get a van and get a sound system. And doesn't matter if you're very good, but if you have a van and a sound system, you're employed. So I got a call. "Can you come down and do sound for us?" And it was Thanksgiving Day, 1968. And I went to the city and I did the sound for the guys. And after the show, Sandy Pearlman, may he rest in peace, who was sort of an entrepreneur and early rock critic and journalist, was managing Soft White Underbelly and had gotten them a record deal with Elektra Records, asked me, did I want to work for the band, because I had a van and I had a sound system. So I moved into the band's house in Great Neck, and that was around Christmas of 1968.
That's great. Now, there was a road between Elektra Records and then the first debut album by Blue Oyster Cult on
Yeah,
Columbia
that took a
Records.
little, there was a period there, yeah.
And what went on in there? Was those some tricky
How much
years?
time do we have?
We're good.
Unknown to me at the time, the singer previous to me was having friction with the band members, and I didn't know any of that. I wasn't there, so I moved into the band house, and it was like a hippie house in Thomaston, and at the top of Spinney Hill. So when you drive into Great Neck from here, as you go up the hill, on the right side, and don't make the left to North Shore Hospital. You go up the hill and look to the right. It's up in that neighborhood in there, in Thomaston. And it was a rented house, nice house, much to the chagrin of the neighbors. A rock group was living there, and had a fiberglass insulation in the basement for to keep the sound down a little bit. And it was quite a scene for a couple of years there, having that house in that neighborhood, I'm sure. But I was living there, and Buck was living there with his girlfriend, and Albert was living there with his girlfriend, and that singer before me was living there with his girlfriend and his dog, and Richard Meltzer was living there with his girlfriend. It was quite a place. And eventually, the singer was let go. And one day, Sandy, it's a very long story, but Alan Lanier, who passed away a couple of years ago, had heard some tapes of me from my previous days and told the other guys that I should get a shot. And Sandy asked me if did I want to replace him. And that's what happened.
That's great. Now, beginning with that first debut album and for the first, especially for the first few records, you had a hand in writing a number of the Blue Oyster Cult songs as well.
After a while, I was not really inserted in there as a writer. They all had been writing for years before I even got there.
And that's exactly where I was going to go.
Mhm.
What role did you play as a composer, and how did you find yourself coming into the role as a songwriter aside from playing?
I never really thought of myself that way. I just wanted to get up and perform, you know. But uh,
It just sort of fell.
just sort of put my hands down on the keyboard and sounds came out, you know,
Right.
or with a guitar and made noise, you know. And I made an interesting connection. I'm a big fan of science fiction and fantasy, and as you know from the tapes I used to take out here,
Yes.
used to come down there before streaming. I met Tony in the down the hall here,
Media services.
taking out DVDs. But I sent a fanboy letter it's before the internet, to Michael Moorcock, who's a famous author, and because I liked his books. And he actually wrote back to me, and he said, let's get together. And he was in London, and we met for lunch, and he started sending me lyrics by mail. And I wrote 3 songs with him because the lyrics inspired me to start writing stuff.
Sure.
And I wrote 3 songs with him, that one of which made a film score, the heavy metal movie. I have a song in that movie, animated film, and a couple of other songs. And you know, bit by bit, I got to try my hand at writing.
This is very natural. Just was something that sort of, you found yourself doing kind of unexpectedly.
Well, also, you know, the other guys are all writing, and I felt like, you know, I gotta
Yeah. Whole toad.
get my act together.
Get in there, get some publishing credits. When it comes to the band, especially the early kind of rise of the band, if you were to step away and look at Blue Oyster Cult, what would you think were some of the sort of important contributing factors that made BOC a success in the early years? And also, what part, you talked a bit about AM radio and how important that was to you growing up. What part do you think FM radio had to play in the rise of FM?
We were very lucky to be who we were when we were. In the 70s was the hotbed of progressive radio, quote unquote, because, you know, of course we're New Yorkers here, and New York had progressive radio, Scott Muni and Allison Steele and DJs like that, who really had radio. They could play what they wanted, and now it's so tight, you know, you can't, it's all computerized, and you can't play anything that, you know, they say you can't play. So back in those days, progressive radio started so-called album radio, and we were very lucky to be the kind of band that fit perfectly with that kind of list. And they would play, our albums would come out, and they said, oh, new Blue Oyster Cult record, new Kansas record, new REO Speedwagon record, new Styx album. And they would play that kind of music, which normally would never have gotten airplay. And maybe today, those bands might have a hard time getting airplay because it's so tight these days.
Yeah, yeah. And it was also the kind of thing, too, where, as you said, it was a whole number of artists that were all playing FM in Europe. They were playing deep cuts too. They weren't just playing
deep tracks,
the 45s.
You know, great. Really thank you, Sirius Radio.
Yeah, yeah. Jumping to the idea of the 45 and the hit record, I'm going to jump to 1976, and you guys recorded the 4th album, Agents of Fortune. Featured a song called "Don't Fear the Reaper." Reached number 12 on the top 40 charts. Rolling Stone magazine named it Song of the Year in 1976. When Donald Rosser, when Buck Dharma first brought that song to the band, did you think it was something special?
Me personally,
Yeah.
I heard his demo, and I thought it's, you know, you gotta understand the technology of the days, the recording technology. Before that, we all used to write in one room or write in hotel rooms, or And then we were getting more and more successful year by year, and everybody started having their own home recording equipment and their own places. And Don wrote that song by himself in his house. So he brought that song in kind of finished. And it was very different than before that. We all used to write together.
Sure.
So it was very different. And it was his take on what he wanted to do by himself. And so it was very different than everything else that had come before that. And I think, I mean, everybody liked it. Of course, nobody knows what a hit sounds like.
Yeah.
Certainly the record label had a good idea, and they were pretty happy with it.
Okay.
And here we are, 76 till now, and it still gets tons of airplay.
Absolutely. Now, just to delve into this a little bit, because the song took on a life of its own. You're a fantasy fan, and Stephen King and Terry Pratchett are some of the authors who've mentioned the song in their books. It's appeared in a number of TV soundtracks, but the subject matter has sparked a little controversy over the years.
Yeah, I never try to interpret it. I always say, ask him. But I've heard him explain
Passing the buck, so to
Yeah,
speak. Oh,
yeah.
sorry.
I've heard him explain it many times. You know, it really is not a suicide song, he says. It's, you know, contemplating what's next.
Yeah. And is that how you personally kind of interpret it when you're performing it?
Oh, I don't try to explain it.
You just do it.
You know, yeah.
The great thing, Blue Oyster Cult has always from the beginning had an excellent reputation as a live band, powerhouse. Personnel has come and gone through the years. The core remains the same. How did it feel to go from clubs to larger venues? And for you personally, how have you held on to that sort of thrill after all these years of playing before a live audience?
Well, we've sort of done it all, you know, from the worst, crappy, bar-filled, you know, beer-strewn, broken glass kind of place, which we played all over Long Island, to the biggest venues there are, and everything in between. And we've gone to all the heights, to crash and burn, you know, to nobody showing up, to working our way back up again. And we're doing great again today, so I can't complain. But I don't really know what else to say. We've worked our way up, album by album, doing really better and better and better. And then mid '80s, you know, gravity set in, and people, you know, disco happened, and you know, hair bands started, and things changed.
But you personally, when you still go out there and you go and do a live show?
Every night is great. We love to play. The only downside of what we do is the travel.
I have a feeling that's something I'm going to hear frequently.
Yeah, I mean, you know, if you want to get from A to B these days, it's not so easy.
Yeah.
And we might play Vermont one day and LA the next day, and it's just not so easy to do anymore.
Yeah, I could imagine. 1977, the album Spectre comes out, another huge FM radio concert.
I do
song.
have an anecdote about that.
Okay.
We were driving somewhere, you know, from A to B, and the Spectres album came out, and we turn on the radio, and we're listening, driving somewhere, and the DJ says, "Oh, we have the new Blue Oyster Cult album here, Spectres."
Wow.
Okay.
Please tell me that wasn't one of the NEW DJs that did
No, it was somewhere in the middle of the country.
Okay, then we can. I never would have forgiven like Muni for doing that. Godzilla again. Did you feel anything unique when Donald brought that in, or was that?
No, we all love monster movies, and I guess he was inspired.
When it comes to the things that you.
But why didn't they use our freaking song
in the movie?
in any of those movies?
That's true. There have been countless.
There was
remakes.
American movies,
Yeah,
and they never used the song.
that's just wrong.
And there's been about 4 of those movies since that song came out.
It seems kind of a perfect.
There
fit,
should have been a
doesn't it?
guy with a boombox listening to the song while
Yes.
Godzilla stomps him into the ground. But no.
When you guys are going in the studio to record, do you road test, or did you road test material first, or was it studio first for the music, then you brought it out?
I think most of the time we as we're writing towards a new record, we usually work the stuff up and try it out somewhere
You did.
to get the kinks out, or try the arrangement somehow, or try to get a
Yeah.
decent arrangement somewhere live.
Yeah, feel out audience responses
Usually.
to the new material. When it comes to you guys as a live act, I remember a long time ago when the Black and Blue tour happened. Blue Oyster Cult and Black Sabbath sharing a bill. That was the hottest ticket at the time.
It was a big tour.
And what do you remember about that experience? It wasn't Ozzy, which is unique.
No,
at
it was
that
Ronnie
time.
Dio.
And you were a fan of Dio's work, weren't you?
Ronnie and I were friends
Oh,
from upstate New York, yeah.
So Ronnie was from up there as well?
Ronnie's from Cortland, New York, yeah.
Oh, okay. So you guys went back before.
Way back, yeah.
So how was that experience? You guys were playing huge venues together. And was that sort of a career? Do you remember that as being like, wow, this is just,
Well, it was a weird experience. There was some friction,
oh,
yeah, because they thought they should headline every night,
oh, okay.
and it wasn't Ronnie. It was the
Management.
the one of those from on high things.
Right.
But it worked out. We did good business.
One of the things that as DJs now, you were talking about the changes in radio and how bad things have gotten. Everything is micro-labeled. And you put a genre label on a band, and I think sometimes it will limit the public's desire to find out what that band is really all about. So for you, without using a genre label other than rock, how would you describe the BOC catalog to someone? Someone said to you, what kind of noise do you guys make?
I never really, I don't think anybody in our band would say that there's a label. Hard rock maybe is about the closest thing, because certainly, we play metal festivals, and we always feel a little out of it when you hear these hard metal bands, and then we go on. And even though metal fans like us, we don't really think that we fit the role too well. Because everybody's jumping up and down, and then we come on and we play Burning for You, and it's like, not exactly what they had been listening to the last 8 bands in a row before us. But we're glad to be there, and people still like what we do. It's just different.
And interestingly, I think that sort of lack of having a very specific slot that you fit
No,
in
we're
has helped.
We're a
I
little
think.
different.
Yeah.
We have all kinds of different songs. Certainly, you can't put "Don't Fear the Reaper" in that catalog,
Right.
of heavy stuff. But we do have plenty of crunchy stuff.
And the imagery, I imagine, helps too. The visual of the band also probably helps with regards to
Yeah, I think
lending to the metal.
original aesthetic was to make it a little dark.
Yeah. Now, I'm mentioning the aesthetic and the album covers, the visions. How have you guys successfully kept sort of the band and the brand of Blue Oyster Cult alive and healthy for almost 50 years? In rock and roll, it's you guys are among the few that are still out there after all these years and doing it well. What would you say? This is how we're doing it, or is it just?
We're just pleased that people still want to come and see us, and that we're still employed.
Now, during the band's run, you were married, you became a father. How do you balance rock and roll with being a dad? Was it sort of,
Well, my children are men.
now?
Yeah, it's
Back then.
well, back then, I give all the credit to my wife for dealing with my boys when they were little. But my boys are 37 and 40, so
Right.
I just don't
Right.
don't think of them as little boys anymore.
But did they know, growing up, did they associate the idea of, they're hearing your songs on the radio? And it was
I don't think they care.
It was just that's what Daddy does for a living?
No, I don't think they can. No,
Were they fans of the band or not?
I
really?
imagine, but it's just that's what Dad does.
That's what Dad does.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is why we get to have dinner. That's really. um, do you? You mentioned the first song you were involved in with sci-fi. You are also an avid gamer.
I still am.
Now, does this mean that there are like evenings at the Bloom residence that are similar to the scene in Big Bang Theory of them playing the Mystic Warlords of Ka?
It's my favorite TV show.
If I would imagine. So
I'll be very sad to see that go after the
last
11th season.
Yeah, I mean,
I saw them interviewed the other day,
they say why?
and they said the only thing they want to see is the elevator to be fixed. They would like maybe the last episode.
Yeah, that would be good.
Yeah.
I would like that as a good wrap up. But you've developed a game, haven't you? That's been something that you developed a video, a game?
Have I ever?
You did, didn't you? You developed a game?
No.
That was misinformation. And I thought
Developed my own game?
Yes, I thought that. Or were
No.
you involved in any of the games directly? Or
Oh well,
Lenny-
actually I developed I visited some game developers, and
Okay.
I developed a part of a game once.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But that's a while ago.
Oh, okay. So that's not something you're still actively doing.
No, not really.
Okay. So right back into
Not that I couldn't if somebody asked me.
Anyone watching out there on the internet, if they'd like, Eric is available.
I'm currently, I'm playing, I play iPad games mostly now.
Right.
I'm not big into PC games like I used to be.
Okay. Did you carry did you have the consoles with you and stuff on the road?
I carry a pretty heavy-duty PC and an iPad mostly.
Cool. We talked about this as you were coming in this evening. You were recently involved in a yearly charity event that was put on by Alice Cooper.
Yes.
Could you tell us a bit about that event and your feelings about musicians kind of giving back to the community? And
Well, yeah. Our first tour ever, when our first album came out, it's an interesting anecdote. Our first album came out in 1972, and our agency at the time, our management got assigned to an agency so we get some shows. We signed to this agency, also had Alice Cooper as an act. And Alice Cooper's management said, we'll give Blue Oyster Cult one show. And it was in Worcester, Massachusetts. And if they liked us, we would get the balance of a whole tour. So we played the show. They liked us. And we played, I can't remember how many shows, a nice chunk, 15, 20 more shows with Alice Cooper. And our first album started breaking off that tour. And this is the original Alice Cooper band, which was a terrific band on his Killer album. And maybe a month before that, I paid to go see Alice Cooper. So this was a tremendous thrill for us. So over the next 40-something years, we played a show here, a show there with Alice Cooper, and we knew each other casually, like, how are you, or how's your family kind of thing. But he's not like a great friend of mine, but we know each other. And 2 or 3 months ago, he called our management and said he's got an annual charity event. Would we like to come and play? So Don and I flew to Phoenix and did his annual Christmas charity event, which is a lot of fun. It's called this Christmas Pudding charity event. We did it last December 8th, and we went the day before, and Buck and I played with a backup band that learned we only got to play 3 songs, but nobody got to play a lot because it would have been way too long. Larry the Cable Guy was the host, and it was a trip meeting him. And Sebastian Bach, and Gretchen Wilson, who's a country western female singer, and Alice Cooper has his Hollywood Vampire Band with Johnny Depp, and it was quite a big show, and sold out this venue in Phoenix for charity, and he's very involved in that in Phoenix.
Most important question, does life have to have more cowbell?
Boy. You know, I saw that on a rare Saturday night off. I saw that live
Wow.
without knowing it was going to be done. No one had told us. So I'm sitting on my couch in my house, and I'm watching SNL, and they go, behind the music, Blue Oyster Cult. I go, oh boy, what are they going to do to us? You know, we had no idea. And I thought they were going to tear us a new one, you know, but it was pretty good.
Yeah, very funny.
And from what I have heard about what the original script was, there was a lot of ad-libbing in that. I think it was mostly Chris Walken was doing all the ad-libbing. And you could, if you watch it again, I mean, it's old already. It's 18 years old.
Yeah.
It's hard to believe it's that long ago already.
Yeah.
You watch those SNL actors who are playing the Blue Oyster Cult musicians, they're dying.
They're cracking up.
They're
Yeah.
cracking up.
Yeah.
And that's, I
Trying
think,
to
what made it so funny.
Yeah. And-
Jimmy Fallon is about to fall over with laughter.
And Farrell is just brilliant.
Well, Farrell is playing me, which is really funny, except my stomach was never that big. I mean, they call him a different name.
Yeah.
And then they got a few things wrong. You know, the guy is dressed to look like Buck. They call him Eric.
Right.
Yeah, they got a few things wrong, but in general, it was pretty funny.
Very well done. And now, in all seriousness, did a spike in the record sales happen after that?
I don't know.
I
you
would
know,
think it
but
must have.
It certainly gave us a little, you know, zets
Yeah.
in you know, we getting on an airplane. You know, people. Oh, are you guys a band? Yeah, we're Blue Oyster Cult. Oh, that cowbell band.
Don't fear the cowbell. Well, I wanted to ask you, this is going to be sort of, as the format goes with the show, there are going to be some general music-related questions that I'm going to ask sort of to all of the guests. And as you're the first guest, you are the first victim. So what do you consider the qualities of a perfect song? Whether it's as a performer, listener, if you hear a song and say, wow, what a great song, what do you think resonates with you?
I don't think there's any rule. When you hear something and you like it, you just can't put your finger on it.
Right, right. It's just something.
When you heard More Than a Feeling by Boston, you don't know what you liked about it, but you go, wow, that's a great song.
Yeah.
Is it Brad Delp's vocal? Is it that guitar tone? To me, it was the guitar tone and Brad Delp's vocal and the chorus, and it was just great.
When you hear songs, do you pick them apart in a way in terms of production?
Well, yeah, it's like a guy who makes movies watching a movie.
Exactly.
You know, he doesn't see it the way the average person sees a movie.
Right, right. Taking away limits of time and space, is there anyone you would like to have performed with or studied with or worked with?
Well, sure.
Okay. Who's the first one that comes to mind? First one that comes to mind.
Well, let's go back to the Cavern Club.
There you go.
You know,
There you go. Back
you
in
know,
Liverpool.
Sit in with those guys.
The lunchtime session.
Yeah.
Maybe be there when Brian Epstein walks in.
Yeah,
Why
maybe, you know, carry their amps in my van.
When you guys go out on the road, it's obviously a huge catalog to choose from. Who puts together the set lists? Is it you or is it Buck? Or
I do.
what makes you want to add a song to this year's set list, this tour's set list, or not? You mix it up?
We are currently, a matter of fact, earlier today, rehearsing stuff just to freshen the set list.
Okay. Okay.
And I always wonder why other bands, without mentioning nobody in particular, but other bands do the exact same set every night. And I wonder why.
Yeah.
Because, and these are big bands, you know, who could very easily not do that. They go a 25-city tour and play the exact same show every night. And they have a lot of fans that wish they mixed it up a little bit. And I change the set every single night. I mean,
great.
even one song, I'll say, well, instead of that, we'll play that.
Right.
But there's obviously some songs that have to stay. The obvious ones have to stay. And maybe we have hardcore fans who don't want to hear those 3 songs again. But we're going to play them for the 99% of the other people who want to hear them
Don't want to
again.
hear it. Yeah.
But, we're dredging up a few songs we haven't played in a while to throw them in.
Do you think the technology has affected what the bands can and can't do, and they're out on the road too much reliance on the video screens and all that and the synchronization? And
No, I don't know. Everybody does what they want to do.
Yeah.
We don't have much in the way of effects. We just got to rock it out.
Yeah, I think it helps you guys to be able to mix it up night
I
by
just,
night.
for my own sanity, I want to play something different.
After all this time, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Out of the Blue Oyster Cult catalog, is there a particular album that for you feels like the one that was like the most realized, the one that you said, this is the one that really was our best work, or is it still to come?
No, I mean, people ask me that all the time. What's your favorite BOC album? And I like Secret Treaties, but it's a lot of fans have, a lot of the hardcore fans like the first 3 the best.
How do you hope that someone will complete this phrase 100 years from now? Once upon a time there was a band called Blue Oyster Cult, and they
They had a good time all the time.
There you go. They say that basically if you do what you love, that it stops being work. Is there any aspect of being out there? You've noted the travel. Is that really the thing for you that is the work part of what you do?
Yeah, I think any band will answer that the same way. Because if they ever get Matter Transmission together, sign me up. Because I got a lot of frequent flyer miles, that just from doing this.
Yeah.
But it's...
Would you step into a transporter? I mean, all the talk about scrambling the atoms. You're
it all
not
depends
a Dr.
how
McCoy?
it's done,
Okay, so you're not a Dr. McCoy. You're going to go in the transporter.
Yeah, I wouldn't be a nervous Nelly.
Okay.
They have to get it down first.
Okay.
It's not going to happen in my time.
Right.
But
You're not going to be the first one in, but you'll.
no.
Do you have any for preparing for a live show? Do you have anything that you do? Are there rituals? Are there superstitions? Are there things that, show's going to start in an hour, I got to do this. This is my prep.
No.
That's it. Just we're ready to rock and roll.
Everybody has to prepare their own way,
Sure.
but nothing spooky.
Okay. Has there been any response to a song or an album in Blue Oyster Cult's career that the response surprised you? You just didn't know that this album or this track was going to get that kind of audience response or that kind of FM radio response. Was there anything that took you by surprise?
Well, anything that's successful is always surprising. It is, because you don't know. I mean, especially when you're first starting and you get some airplay, and you're just surprised that people like what you're doing.
Right.
I mean, look at Greta Van Fleet, who are going to be on SNL this week. They were a bunch of kids, and I'm sure they're shocked as hell that they're so successful so fast.
Yeah. Yeah. Talking about that and a new band like that, are there still performers that you are discovering, new or old, that move you? Recent artists that have come along, or older artists that you've just found and said, wow, this stuff is great? This is not a paid endorsement, mind you.
New bands?
New bands or older bands that you're now discovering? Anything, any music that you're hearing for the first time in recent,
Nothing. I wish I had a deep answer for that.
But nothing's jumping at you.
I like what I like, I like fusion and stuff like that. So,
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Big fan of Al Di Meola.
Okay. So, finally, as we would expect, because as I mentioned, you're patterning this a bit after Inside the Actors Studio. They do the 10. We're going to do the dozen. So I'm going to ask.
I'm in trouble.
Add a couple. These are the first response that comes into your mind to the following questions. What is your favorite word?
My favorite word. Rockin'.
Okay. What is your least favorite word?
President.
Yeah. What turns you on?
Freedom.
What turns you off?
Censure.
What sound or noise do you love?
Laughter.
What sound or noise do you hate?
Crying.
Who is your favorite fictional hero?
The Hardy Boys.
All right. Who is your favorite non-fictional hero?
You have to think about that. Come back to that one.
Come back to that one. What makes you want to swear?
Sounds corny, but injustice.
What profession other than yours would you like to undertake?
A submarine captain.
What profession other than yours would you absolutely not want to undertake?
Oh, boy. I'll pass on that.
Okay. We will go back to your favorite nonfiction hero.
I can't come up with anything.
Okay.
Sorry.
That's okay. Finally, if heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
How you doing?
And with that, I want to thank very much our first guest in Inside the Musician's Mind, Mr. Eric Bloom. I want to thank everyone for coming out this evening to the Port Washington Library. Will you be here for a couple of minutes?
Yeah.
All right, Eric will be here for a few minutes. I want to thank everyone on the internet for joining us for this first episode of Inside the Musician's Mind. And we hope to see you all next month. Thank you. Thank you, sir. That was a blast.
All
It
right.
was a lot of fun. So
I missed a couple of those answers.
that's okay, though. That happens. So no, thanks for doing this. This was brilliant. Are you going to hang out for a couple minutes?
Q&A?
You want to do a Q&A? If anyone
Anybody
have
have
any
a question?
questions? Anyone? Yeah, there are a couple of hands going up over there. They're
Yes,
right there.
Frank's is my favorite pizza.
Frank's for pizza.
Other than the cowbell sketch,
Yes.
are there any of the films that have been about the rock life that caught it well? Spinal Tap, Almost Famous, or Stars Born?
Bohemian Rhapsody was awesome.
Yeah.
But Spinal Tap is almost too real to be true. I mean, whoever, Rob Reiner and all those people put that movie together, it's deadly factual. It seems funny, but it's so much of that stuff in that movie, like getting lost backstage and all that stuff. It's really, Cleveland, all that stuff has happened to everybody I know.
Another question over there?
Good. Okay. I used to get my stuff done there. Oh, good. Yeah, we're playing in Riverhead tomorrow night at the. Oh, good.
And David? Yeah. All right. Dave?
Okay.
I just want to tell you, I also, as you might know, Tony has a radio show. I also have a radio show on local college station, WCWP, and my show is heavy metal hard rock. And I always play Blue Oyster Cult. I grew up in Ohio. We love Blue Oyster Cult.
The Midwest is great for us.
And I played recently I played the Subhuman, which is the song I believe you co-wrote.
Yes.
And I asked you about 7 string biz busters, and I'll put that on. And like Tattooed Vampire is a good one off of, like as far as the heavier riffs and so forth. But I always get the Blue Oyster Cult on, and if anybody that still likes to listen to that kind of music, I pepper it in with things from today. And there's one band, I don't know, Eric, if you ever heard of them, called Ghost, that really, when I listen to them, I get a big Blue Oyster Cult influence, even though they haven't stated it. I don't know if it's in the smoothness of the vocal, like the you do yourself. So, but I definitely get big Blue Oyster Cult influence from them. They're very successful.
How does it feel to hear that kind of
I've heard
influence?
that.
Yeah.
I've never heard their music, but somebody
Yeah.
told me the same thing.
How does it feel over the years? I'm sure you've heard, the other bands say we've been influenced by BOC. That's got to be a
I
great
guess.
vibe. Yeah, yeah. Any other questions? Oh, one right there, Adina.
Could you I'm a little hard of hearing. So
Adina was asking, do you, feeling that every time you perform, that the songs, the music has each song can have a profound effect and affected every member of the audience a different way. And how does it feel to know that you're kind of having that
Well,
profound effect?
you could just hope that it's something good, I guess, or makes you feel something.
Yeah.
We have songs of all kinds of different songs. Like you mentioned a song like Tattoo Vampire. It's written by the late Helen Robbins, who was our ex-drummer's girlfriend at one time, who lived in our band house in Great Neck. So it's, everything has a different meaning to me and somebody else.
You had mentioned Richard Belzer also lived
Richard
in that house?
Meltzer.
Oh, Richard Meltzer.
he
Yeah,
wrote-
Richard
he wrote-
Meltzer, of course.
He wrote
course,
a
yeah,
book
yeah, yeah.
called The Aesthetics of
Yeah,
Rock, which is
yeah.
probably in the library.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I heard when you said it, I heard Belzer. I was like,
No.
Richard Belzer was living with you guys? I was
Yeah,
like, wow, I
Richard-
forgot about Richard Meltzer for
Yeah.
a minute. Yeah, that was going to hold you. And it dawned on me about 8 minutes later, all of a sudden, did he say Richard Belzer? Yeah, Richard Meltzer, of course.
Yeah, Meltzer wrote a book called Aesthetics of Rock, and he went to Stony Brook with Perlman,
Yeah.
and he wrote the lyric to Burning for You.
Oh, wow. Okay. Okay. And we had another question right there, and we'll go back to that. Thank you. Yeah.
The acoustic show, yeah. Yeah, it was fun. I think it's all the above, I mean, Buck brought the Reaper in, it was his, and he sang it, and there was no question about it. Then there was other songs like a song like Dr. Music that Joe wrote, and I think the producer wanted me to sing it. There's others, you know, or a song like uh, over the years, a lot of times that's why you hire a producer. He's the Fuhrer, and he says, I think so and so would be better for this than you who wrote it. And that's why you hire a guy like that. So, but most of the time, usually the writer is the singer, unless it's just not appropriate. And it's the producer's call.
Okay. And we'll take the last question right here.
Yes? Oh, okay. My cousin Stanley? I didn't know him very well, but I know he wrote a couple of books.
That was it. Not anyone that was an effect on you in terms of
No,
direct.
it's a distant cousin. I didn't know him very well. I really don't have much to say.
Sci-fi wise, who was the author that affected you most?
Hmm?
In science fiction, who's really the author who
Oh
affected you
gosh,
most?
I read all of the
Yeah.
Golden Age guys. You know, Ray Bradbury and Isaac Asimov and Theodore Sturgeon and on and on and on. You know, I devoured all that stuff.
Yeah.
And they're making a new Dune movie, which I'm very hopeful.
Really?
Yeah,
Okay.
they're now casting it.
Okay. Okay. And Sting will not be reprising his run. No.
No, they apparently have high hopes it's going to be good.
Cool. Okay, that's interesting. I saw one more hand go up back there. Barry?
Couldn't be more obscure than Stanley Elkin. Yeah. Yeah. Have no idea. No. That's
Gonna
a-
ask the
that's-
art designer.
Yeah. The I doubt it. The art design was a record company thing. And also the artist, Bill Golick, went to college with Perlman and Meltzer at Stony Brook and has disappeared.
Oh wow.
So if you want some added mystery. We now I don't know if he did the lettering. He might have. I'll have to ask around about that. But Bill Gawlik, Gawlik, he went to college with Sandy Perlman and Richard Meltzer at Stony Brook. He was a eccentric guy and a genius artist. And he used to have these huge paper rolls that he would unroll of robots and architectural designs of weird places and things.
Wow.
And he was the first person Sandy thought to do the first two albums, and which are beautiful designs. And about a year or two after that, he fell off the face of the earth, and no one knows where he is or whatever happened to him.
Wow.
And we've Googled him. Other than internet searches have come up zero.
That's wild.
He invented the symbol, or he took it from a book of symbols and put it on the first album cover.
Wow. Well, do you have time for one more? You want to take one more? And then we're
Yeah,
gonna-
sure.
Okay. Well, last question, and then we're gonna. Oh, there you go.
The new one or the old one? Oh yeah, we played there several times in the old one. And anybody ever go there?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it was a great place.
Seeing soft white underbelly.
We were just talking about that in the car today. some of the other guys had never been there. I went there with an old college friend of mine before Epi had it, before it was rock. It was a country western place, way back, and the walls had, Loretta Lynn and stuff like that on the wall. And then Epi started promoting it, and it became a rock place. I think we played there 4 or 5 times.
And you guys, I remember you guys playing there as Soft White Underbelly.
We might have.
yeah, going under the secret
Yeah,
building
we
when you
did that.
guys were huge.
We did that a little bit.
Yeah.
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 And then I think we were the official band to close the place, but it might have had a few more shows after that.
Yeah.
But it was a hot, sweaty, rock club, but it was fun.
It was a blast.
And Epi's now reopened in the, I understand it's like 75 seats or something like that in the new place. I haven't been there.
Yeah. So, once again, I want to thank everyone so much for coming out. I want to thank my guest, Mr. Eric Bloom. And come back again next month, Nellie Mackay.